In almost every way, Fire Emblem Warriors is an improvement on Hyrule Warriors. I won't make a comment about other Dynasty Warrior style games because I haven't played them, but for me, comparing these two Warrior styles games, published by Nintendo featuring their first party franchises, seems like a good way to make a comment on what Fire Emblem Warriors does well, falls short on, and improves on. I admittedly had very little expectations going into this game because the trailers all looked lackluster in the way that almost every instance of combat just seemed to be, hey, here's another character to match X or Y with, but it looks slightly different. However, the game proved to be more fun than I thought. Doesn't mean that there weren't any issues with the combat, which I'll get into, but it was a pleasant surprise. Gameplay. I'm going to get into what is both the best part of the game and the worst. The objective of the game is to control multiple units throughout the map, and have them take objectives and forts as you move closer to, ultimately, the last target. Sometimes certain conditions must be fulfilled, and there are even side missions called Anna's Mementos which require you to fulfill an extra objective. When you do, she appears and you must go to her to pick up the memento, which is a panel on a puzzle you collect similarly to Poke NDX. These Anna missions are rarely challenging, mostly it's defeat 1000 enemies, only once in a while changing to something different like take 5 enemy forts. As you play through a match, various submissions show up, like killing an enemy unit that is retreating to request more reinforcements, saving villagers, etc. On lower difficulties, you could ignore these submissions and not notice the impact at all, but on a higher difficulty and classic mode, you'll understand the importance of keeping track of these side missions to give you an advantage. Speaking of which, classic and casual mode make a return. For those not familiar with Fire Emblem, classic mode is a mode where any of your units that die in battle are lost until you revive them, and in casual, this does not happen. Any fallen units are brought back in the next chapter. There are also chests occasionally strewn throughout the map, and a specific unit indicated on your map will be holding the key, so you must kill that unit and bring the key to the chest for the item, which is usually a decent reward like healing items. I just want to say thanks to the developers for not locking the key to whichever unit picked it up. It is entirely possible to pick up a key with Chrom on one side of the map, for instance, and then have Lucina open its chest on the other side of the map, because the inventory is shared. I bring up all of this not only to establish what there is to do, but how it plays into what is probably the most fun part of the game, your ability to control your units separately. In Hyrule Warriors, if you wanted a specific unit in an area, you had to manually move that unit and leave them there. Fire Emblem Warriors takes hints from Fire Emblem games and puts strategic movement at the heart of the gameplay, which works well to its advantage. You can control a unit yourself, but then open up the map and issue orders to your remaining units, and there are a variety of control options to choose from. You can have units attack forts, nearby enemies, defend forts, defend specific allies, and for those with healing abilities, you can command them to seek out an ally and heal them. The depth with this can go is actually quite impressive. The weapon triangle also makes a return. Sword beats axe, axe beats spears, and spears beats swords. There are also other things to consider, like bows being good against flyers, and specific weapons having attributes like Mount Slayer to deal extra damage to your units on horseback. If you're playing on easy mode, you're in for a button mashing romp, and you won't have to care about a lot of submissions or weapon advantages. You could probably just rush through the map without issuing orders to any other units and using only one unit, and beat the game no problem. If you're looking for a quick and harmless experience, especially since a lot of people are trying to get this game out of the way in favor of Super Mario Odyssey coming out this week, seriously Nintendo, not a smart release schedule, then easy mode is for you. However, if you play on easy, make no mistake, there is depth to be had here that you aren't experiencing. Hard mode, and even normal mode, will definitely force you to make smart decisions and multitask with your units to juggle everything happening on the map, and will keep you wary of which units you're using. If you send Cordelia, a flyer unit, to take a fort inhabited by archers, she's probably going to die. There are also maps that have areas that are closed off until you raise a bridge, but flyer units can cross that gap anyway, so depending on the map, you could also make decisions on which units to bring. This all brings strategy to the gameplay, which is a huge plus. I think where a lot of people will get bored is the combat itself. Your attacks consist of weak and strong attacks. You can use your weak attacks a certain amount of times before using a strong attack, and depending on where you put your strong attack in the string, you'll have a different effect. But for the most part, a strong attack at the end of a combo is a big area of effect move that destroys pretty much everything in front of you. This is how the gameplay is for a majority of your units, so besides aesthetic differences between the characters, it's not going to feel very different playing different units, which is a step down from Hyrule Warriors. For instance, Sheik in that game would do a combo, and then you could have her play the harp after the combo ends, and you could influence the song she plays. Depending on that song, she would gain a passive benefit, like an aura damaging nearby enemies. Hyrule Warriors also featured multiple weapons for each character, so you could play a character a whole bunch and not get bored because you could change their combat method. Fire Emblem Warriors has multiple weapon types, but characters can only ever use one kind of weapon. Chrom can only ever use a sword, and that's it. Any change to his weapon is just changing one sword for another, with no change to the combat itself. This lack of diversity is also emphasized by the fact that a lot of characters in this game have duplicate movesets. Chrom and Lucina, Leo and Elise, and Rowan and Leanna are good examples. These pairs of units all have very similar looking animations, and the moves themselves are the exact same. This is not acceptable. This only becomes beneficial in the main story when the group is split up, with the clones in separate groups, so you can experience similar gameplay no matter which group you use. In general, this is a huge hit to the enjoyability of the game. Fire Emblem has great characters, but it's harder to appreciate this when a lot of them play the same. Hyrule Warriors also had a good number of items like bombs and arrows with which you could use. Hyrule Warriors has better combat, while Fire Emblem has better strategic elements. Depending on what you prefer, you may like one or the other. Personally, I do prefer Fire Emblem Warriors since combat is relatively generic in both games. At least the strategy in this game is a unique element that stands out. Story. The story is super generic, but this isn't a hill I'm going to die on. To harshly criticize this game's story and hold that against it would be similar to being harsh on an arcade fighting game story. That's not the focus of the game. Pretty much, siblings to the throne of a kingdom called Aetolis are separated from their mother during an attack on their castle. Carrying the Shield of Flames, they eventually encounter heroes from other realms holding gleam stones that fit into the shield in order to close the portals to the other worlds and set things right. Anything beyond that is spoiler territory, so I won't go much beyond that. The story mostly serves as a convenient explanation as to why all these characters exist in the same universe and not much else. Of course, in the story mode, once you fight a certain enemy, you'll take them on as an ally. I wish this wasn't done so lamely with the Fates characters, as pretty much every story explanation for fighting them was, OMG, you kidnapped my sibling and shit. Even when their siblings are right there saying, no they didn't. Every one of these battles are set up as some rage-induced misunderstanding, or in other cases it's mind control, which is just super lazy and at this point tiring to see. This form of convenient storytelling is almost as old as gaming itself, and I really wish they wouldn't have gone with this route. I liked Frederick's fight because he's testing you to see your skills and resolve, not out of some misunderstanding and won't talk to you at all. The characters stay decently in character, but it's hard to shine a light on any of them specifically, since there are just so many people in your party. There's a great moment between Niles and Leo, though, where Niles stands too close to Leo and Leo tries to tell him something. The joke is Niles is gay for Leo. Pretty funny. Besides that, any character interaction has to be earned through increasing friendship levels to A rank to see a conversation between the two units, and there are gameplay benefits to having units build bonds. These conversations are very one-note though. As I said, character progression and story aren't at the heart of this game, so don't expect much. Camp/Convoy. You'll come to these menus a lot in between battles. It's here where you can upgrade weapons, increase unit stats, equip units, and even revive fallen allies in classic mode. Due to the fact that it's actually possible to revive fallen allies in classic mode, I'd recommend casual mode even if you want to play on a harder difficulty. Reviving a fallen ally is locked behind 300,000 gold and offering any 10 gold level materials. So if you play classic mode but plan on reviving any fallen units, you may as well play casual mode, since all classic mode will prove to do for you is eat up your currency and good items in the event that an ally does die. You can combine weapons to move attributes from one weapon to another, giving you passive strengths, but as I mentioned, every character can only really use one weapon, and the weapon's passive benefits itself does not change how combat is done, so it's rarely noticed. The same goes for crests. Crests are skill trees that you unlock using material, which in most cases provide passive bonuses like defensive and offensive stats. However, some crests are actually fun investing in because they increase your combo tree, albeit slightly, give your units skills, and upgrade their class. Upgrading a unit's class requires that they are level 15 and you have an item called a Master Seal, but upgrading a unit's class is kind of insanely good. When you see your unit's new stats, you'll be surprised to see most of their stats go up by 20 or so per stat. Their HP can climb from 160 to 220 just by upgrading the class. That is insane. Needless to say, I think the class upgrade provides an insane boost of power that makes them a bit too untouchable at first, and makes your other units nearly obsolete until you find Master Seals for them as well. Extras. Something I can't get over and I'm going to get into right away. Game settings. Why can you not change the voice language setting? It's not even like the option isn't there. It's there in the menu, but it's grayed out and you're unable to change the language. And if the option to change the language becomes available later, they don't tell you when that is. I actually don't care about the voice language as much as other people do. My issue is putting an option in the menu for us to see and then not allowing us to interface with that option. This is a great way to piss people off, and it does in fact piss me off. The English voices in this game aren't terrible, but the ones that are terrible? Oh man, one word, Hinoka. If you play this game, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. What's my task? A lot of the original voice actors don't come back for the voices in this game like Lucina and Camilla. However, their replacements, for the most part, do a serviceable job in the role, so I can't complain. There are some decent other options like disabling level up pop-up windows, mid-battle cinematics, and mission confirmations. Depending on what you prefer, you can go for a more efficient gameplay style, or if you like seeing everything in full detail, you can enable all of the windows. I highly recommend disabling every interruption though. Trust me, it gets incredibly jarring to be constantly stopped in your tracks to be told about some very minor change on the battlefield. It takes me out of the game and almost feels like my attention span is being insulted. There is also a display setting, quality and performance mode. Quality makes the game look nice, while performance sacrifices visual spectacle to save frame rate. In my experience, I've only ever dropped frames when using a huge special move on an absurdly high number of enemies, even when undocked, so frames were never an issue, but it's nice that the option is there. There is also a records hall. By using units enough, you'll eventually unlock their model in the warrior's gallery to view, along with other goodies like a movie gallery. Nice additions, but they don't really add much, feels more like a formality, but it doesn't take away from the game at all. If anything, looking at some of the models in the warrior gallery makes me wish someone would take these and make them skins as downloadable skin mods for Super Smash Bros. They really are quite nice. There is also a history mode where you can loosely experience the story of Awakening, Fates, and Shadow Dragon. This has to be my favorite mode in the game. These are legitimately challenging modes, which have good rewards and can impose strict conditions on you. Unlike story mode, where the goal is usually to take the enemy fort more times than not, history mode has a variety of ways to win. Killing as many enemies as possible in the time limit, killing a certain number of units before time runs out. Sometimes you get an arena type gauntlet, or you're restricted in the characters you can use. Sometimes they'll only allow you to use axe wielders, or units from Awakening only. This is where the challenge of the game can truly shine, and is definitely a step up from the story mode. Once you finish a map in history mode, you'll also get bonus portals on that map that open up to provide an exponentially tougher challenge. In my opinion, this is where the game is at its best. The verdict. I liked Hyrule Warriors quite a bit, so to say I liked Fire Emblem Warriors more is quite a compliment, considering I had low expectations for this game. Being able to experience these characters in full 3D live combat is great fan service to the fans of the game they come from, and the combat is uniquely strategic when it comes to map management. Characters can only use one weapon, but the customization for increasing the capability of a unit's weapon is quite varied. The game offers a fun challenge for those seeking it while offering a button-mashing romp for those looking for a quick game to burn some time, so casual players and those looking for a challenge can both be satisfied. The game fails at delivering an engaging combat system itself, feeling rather repetitive. A lot of characters share movesets which just serves to artificially inflate the roster. This is also unfortunate considering that some of the more unique characters, the biggest draw of the game, are held behind DLC paywalls. Want to play as Azura? Niles? Oboro? Sorry, gotta pay. I wouldn't have had an issue with that if this were DLC given to us down the line like in Super Smash Bros. However, this is locking content just for the sake of it, which is a practice I can't get behind. I mentioned the story was generic, but I won't hold that against the game, much like I did with ARMS. This is not a game about its story. Overall, I will give this game a 7 out of 10. I don't want to come across as being safe with my scoring since this is what I gave ARMS, but it's true, this just seems like a good score. I am still working on that Smash Bros. 5 prediction video, but it's ended up becoming a massive undertaking. Trust me, you'll know what I mean once I release it. In the meantime, I'll be hard at work playing Mario Odyssey in order to get my review out for that game sometime next week, or the week after that. I'm sorry, I'm not like everyone else, I don't get early review copies a week before the game is actually out. I have to wait like a lowly citizen and actually play the game and review it with some actual insight. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I hope I've contributed to your thoughts on Fire Emblem Warriors. Until next time.